Cecilia, I am so happy to invite you on the show. I know you've also newly joined WIIM, so welcome to the group and the organization, but you are certainly no newbie to influencer marketing. So we're excited to have you here. So first and foremost, welcome.
Thank you so much. Yeah, no, the WIIM community is really, really amazing. So much support, and it's just great. We're a growing industry. This industry is 10 plus years old, and it's so interesting to see now how many companies are looking for influencer marketers, whether in-house, whether it's on, the platform side, whether it's on the talent side. It's just been booming, I feel like, even more so with COVID. And so this community, it's really amazing. Everybody is helping each other out, and especially a strong, sisterhood as well, which is great.
Yes, all about that. And you're also like a fellow Brooklynite. So it's wild that we're doing this remotely. I should have met at a recording studio to just do this in person, but soon we'll be able to all meet in person. It'll be really lovely to have that element again. So you have this really awesome background in, influencer marketing, and that you've worked on multiple sides of the industry. A lot of women wanted to do that and haven't necessarily been successful. I would love to just hear in your own words a little bit about your professional journey and sort of how you ended up to where you are today.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I feel like and I feel like probably that's the case with a lot of people with this industry. I landed in this industry really at the beginning. We're talking 2013, 2014, back when influencers weren't called influencers, they were called bloggers. And I started my career in London. So I lived in London for 6 years. And my first ever experience working with influencers was actually in-house. I was working for an app that was a social media app that no longer exists, but the concept of the app was truly connecting people together that shared similar interests. And that was the first time that I tapped into YouTubers and influencers because they had a niche audience about a specific topic. And so I wanted them to promote, the certain groups of people that were talking about a specific topic. Like, for example, we had an LGBTQ focused community of people. And so I reached out to this LGBTQ YouTuber, and they were the one that drove the highest amount of downloads, by far. And it was so interesting to compare, all of the different acquisition strategies that we were doing, again, back in the day. And truly that one YouTuber was the one that brought us the most amount of downloads. So that was, for me, was a bit of an aha moment, because I was like, wait, we're not spending money, because then we weren't really paying as much the influencers. I mean, it was truly really, really different. We were in Europe too, so we're always a couple years behind the US. But I was like, wait, that's crazy. How is this one person driving all these downloads, driving, all their people to come and to download something just because they told them to? And that led me to go on and work at Reward Style, which in Europe, there weren't, again, that many companies that were doing influencer marketing. We're talking 6-7 years ago. And I hadn't heard of Reward Style, but they had this one, their European HQ was in London. And so they were looking for someone also to grow the French market. And I'm myself French American. So I am from France originally. And so I was like, wait, that's a great fit. And I ended up working there almost 4 years, truly the best years of my career, honestly. And that really, truly shaped how I think about influencer marketing today. And I think it was also really interesting because this was a company that was really pioneering what influencer marketing really looks like now. I think a lot of people that started companies in 2012, 2013 in the influencer marketing space were really visionaries, in my opinion, and pioneers. And that's exactly what it was. Amber and Baxter, the founders, were really founded this company, over 10 years ago now. And I was sitting on more of the influencer side of Reward Style, so more of the talent side. And I was looking after really the European expansion. So really helping all of these amazing European creators, YouTubers, bloggers, influencers grow their revenue and grow their business. And I mean, I could talk about this for hours, but that was, so interesting, and made me also realize, how specific each market is. I was really specifically looking after Germany, France, and the UK. And each of those three markets, even just on their own, are extremely different. And so from the influencers, from the content that is being created, and also from the consumer side of things. Just a quick example, but for example, in Germany, consumers have no problem purchasing luxury goods and luxury items online. Whereas, for example, in France, that's not the case. In France, it's all about slightly more low cost, finding the good deal online. That's kind of more the way that consumer think.
I must be French or something, 'cause somewhere I love a good deal, so I can relate to that for sure.
I mean, I love a good deal, but I think it's also like a kind of an older way of thinking about, when you were first going online, like first e-commerce, it was always to find a better deal than offline. And I think that sort of stayed stayed true and stayed the same way in France. And then in the UK, the English market is definitely the closest, definitely to the American market, because of course it's the same language. It's the same type of brands really that do really well. Beauty, fashion brands do extremely well online. Essentially, I was working and helping these creators grow their business, even pitching them content ideas for YouTube, for Instagram. I mean, it was fascinating, and also truly being there when there was really the transition from blogs to Instagram. And then I moved to New York in 2019, so 2 years ago, right before COVID. So that has been a crazy ride and a crazy experience, but one that I'm so happy about. I mean, I always kind of wanted to move to New York. I was super lucky that I was able to get my boyfriend to come with me, and we both came here in 2019. We had a little bit of months before COVID, and then COVID happened and everything was crazy. But I originally moved to New York working for more of a SaaS platform, which is Octoly, which for those that are not familiar, it's a slightly more micro-influencer gifting platform in more of the beauty industry. And at Rewarsa, I was working a lot more within fashion and lifestyle brands, and I think at Octoly, it's a lot more beauty focused because, of course, as we know with beauty, you have to try the products. And that's why so many of the beauty boxes are so extremely popular today, because consumers want to test and try. But what was super interesting is that it was only about micro influencers, because there was no paid campaigns. It was truly just they would be gifted products in exchange for posts, in exchange for reviews and posts. And so that was super interesting. That was also a new kind of facet of the industry that I experienced. And then all of last year, it was, working a little bit at Village Marketing on the more agency side. And the agency side, I hadn't truly quote unquote done that as well. And then venturing out on my own, towards the end of last year, thinking, I have this interesting background. I think a lot of my friends also in New York that are also, a lot of them are entrepreneurs, have their brand. We're like, we would love your help with some of our campaigns. We just don't know exactly what to do, what type of influencers to cast. Can you help us? And so I really made that complete shift between working more on the talent side to then going on to really helping brands. And it's really, really interesting to do both, because I think you really have such a better understanding of why influencers request certain things, because I've been on their side, and why brands also request certain things, and what is expected for both parties, and how can you make the two kind of work better together.
So I can only imagine during the transition from each role to each role, there's some soul searching happening. And is this the right move for me? I mean, I've been there, right? I'm sure a lot of people watching, listening have been there as well. When you made that final transition to work for yourself, talk us through what that was like and what ultimately made you take the leap.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. So many moments of doubt, honestly. I think a lot of people, and I think women in general, I had huge imposter syndrome of am I really doing this? Are people going to really take me seriously? And I've only really done more of the brand side for a year and a half. Is that even, long enough for me to really justify kind of working with brands? But I think what has been really, really amazing for me is I have a huge, I think, support system and network really in New York of, again, fellow entrepreneurs, fellow friends that really gave me the best advice, whether they had a service-based company or a brand. And so they've, of course, gone through their own sets of challenges. But one of my really dear friend has an amazing jewelry company, and she was my first client. She really is the one that approached me and said, hey, I know you maybe are thinking of, doing something else, or maybe you're not sure. Look, if you have a bit of time, I would love for you to maybe help me a little bit with my brand and help me with some strategy. We don't really know how to work with influencers. We've done a little bit of gifting here and there, but that's about it. And I was like, yes, of course I can help you. And I started helping her, and it started working really, really well. And I was like, wait, I can do this for myself. If I can do this for my friend, I can do this for other brands. And there's been also a lot of great word of mouth where I haven't really had to outreach as much, which is, truly the best scenario. But a lot of it is just word of mouth and recommendation. And I think the fact that when you have your own consultancy, you get to choose really the brand that you want to work with. And for me, it's really supporting small businesses. It's really working with small to medium-sized brands. And a lot of the time they're women-owned and women-founded. And a lot of the time they're not VC-backed. They've been built from the ground up. That to me was so important because I just wanted to support them. And especially during the pandemic, so many brands have had to shift their focus and their strategy and the way that they allocated their budget. And a lot of it went towards influencer marketing. So it was just sort of a right time. And, after working for, 7 years in the industry, I was like, okay, maybe I can do it. And I've been doing this for a year. And I mean, it feels like it's been only 2 months, but it's been a year already. And it's amazing. I love it.
If you could do this during a pandemic, you can probably do this anytime, right? I mean, we've all sort of seen our industry, like, knock on wood, is like fairly pandemic proof. In fact, it's sort of been thriving throughout all of this, which is fantastic. But through the doubts, through the imposter syndrome, through the fear, you've come out the other side like a full year later. I love what you were saying specifically about that your first client was somebody who sort of like approached you, somebody that was part of your network, and you sort of are like cultivating a clearer sense of like who your client is. I think that's so important. Talk to us a little bit about that. I think that people who are curious about going out on their own consulting, like, that's probably the number one question, right? It's like, I want to do this, but like, how do I get my first client? I mean, that's a huge thing. I think it's fantastic in a lot of instances where you can sort of look to what you've already built historically versus reinventing the wheel and just getting in touch with people and saying, hey, can you be my client? To people that you've already known, your network. Like, what was that process like? What were those conversations like? And did it take much convincing once she or he approached you to work together?
Yeah, no, and it's always funny. And that's why I think it's so great when women support other women, because truly, I don't think I would have gone out on my own had my friend not reached out to me and said, hey, like, I think you'd be a perfect fit for us to help us with our strategy. Like, I didn't even think I was ready at all to be, an entrepreneur. I didn't think, I thought maybe I'm too young, maybe I'm not ready. And what I think is what was great for me is that it started like a really, really small campaign, a small brand, small budget, meaning maybe low risk and hopefully high reward. And I think that was kind of a perfect scenario because you're starting small. You need to bank a few wins. I have found like my first 6 months was really, truly almost convincing myself that I could do it. And I needed to get some of those wins in so that I could reassure myself to think, okay, maybe I can go after maybe a little bit bigger brands now because, okay, I've done it a few times. I've seen how it all works, how it all operates. And I think that was the perfect way to kind of dipping my toes in it was to work with a small brand with, a small team. It's 2 women who have this jewelry brand. That's it. Their business almost looked like mine in a way too. And the fact, of course, that it's a great friend definitely helped, but it was almost added pressure too that it was a friend because I was like, wait, like this friend is going to be trusting me with some of their marketing budget. I need to do a really, really good job, convincing them that they did the right decision in hiring me. But all this to say, I think starting small to kind of bang those wins in and kind of get a little bit more confident was, I think, what really truly made me, want to continue this and made me, more confident on a day-to-day basis.
I love that. Like, we all need different pushes. We all need different things to get us to where we need to be to take a leap of faith, and being honest about what you need and moving through that, like not judging it, and how awesome it is to have a friend that would help you get there. I also hear you on that though. You're like, I mean, as a friend, and it sounds great. Like, she helped me get there and she wanted to hire me, but like, yeah, I can imagine there's added pressure, right? Like they say, don't work with friends, family, stuff like that. So, that it could make the relationship a little cloudy, even if it doesn't. Like you said, it's pressure. You want to do right by your friends. I can only imagine that sounds very real. And so you did it and you're doing it. And yeah, you're creating case studies for yourself, proofs of success. And you got to track those things too, right? You got to get all those nuggets of success so that you can then share them with potential future clients and certainly, build yourself up to know I can do this. And in fact, I'm doing it as we speak, right? I also love that you've worked in multiple markets. I find that is pretty unique of the people that I speak with. Maybe they know their European market, but they don't necessarily know the US market or vice versa. And you've sort of worked in all of them. You were talking about nuancy differences between, selling or buying patterns, between buying patterns in France and Germany. And I've been to both of those countries and I wouldn't know that based on my experience. So it's cool that you have a great understanding of that. I'd love to hear more about just how influencer marketing differs in different markets that you're familiar with?
Yeah, no, absolutely. The three countries that I definitely know the most in Europe are France, Germany, and the UK, because those are really, truly, I would say, the biggest markets outside of Scandinavia for influencer marketing. So those were the three that I've worked with the most. And I mean, they are so, so different from a consumer perspective, from a brand perspective, and from an influencer and content perspective. They're really, really different. Let's say we combine those three countries and we compare it with the US. I would say one of the biggest difference is, and it's going to sound so silly in the US because that's a given here, but it's really not in Europe. It's that in the US, everybody has a credit card or multiple credit cards. The concept of credit is really not a thing in Europe. Like, people don't have credit cards. People have debit cards. And what it means is that you're going to be buying something online truly if you can afford it. So you only purchasing something based on what you have on your bank account. So that has a huge impact on the way that you think about e-commerce, because people are going to be saving up, to buy something online. They're not going to use their 3 credit cards and then think, okay, maybe I can't afford this, but I'm still going to buy it. And I think that makes a huge difference in like just sales and revenue in general. And a lot of the times, maybe in the US, people don't necessarily realize that. And even for me personally, I moved here 2 years ago and I had to get completely, had to adapt myself completely to that credit card system because it is truly so, so different. So that's one thing that's very, very different. And I think it's really in terms of the platforms of choice. I would say YouTube is actually huge in Europe. And I think maybe also people don't realize that. And I almost feel like there's more variety of content, because I find that in the US, YouTubers are a lot of the times are beauty focused, or there's a lot of interior and DIY type of content. And of course, there's fashion, but I find that there's fashion when it's under more of a Vogue or a kind of more big publication. That's the fashion content that we have. Whereas I feel like in Europe, there's so many fashion YouTubers, like specifically fashion. And for brands, I think it's a little bit more affordable to work with those fashion YouTubers in Europe as it is in the US, because as we know in the US, YouTubers tend to be more expensive because it's video content, usually exclusive content and dedicated content, and tends to be more pricier. Whereas in the other way around, Instagram, to work with people on Instagram, it's a little bit more affordable in the US and it's a little bit more expensive in Europe. So, I mean, you have all these variety, and I'm even talking about Europe as if it was one big place, but then you drill it down to each country, it has its own specificity. I think truly the US is I would say, 5 years ahead of France, maybe Germany, maybe Southern Europe in terms of this space. Maybe it's 2-3 years ahead of the UK, but it is definitely ahead. And that's what's really, really fun for me, to be honest, because I'm seeing what the trends are here. And I'm talking to a lot of clients or brands in Europe, in France, in the UK, and they're like, okay, they're still just doing gifting campaigns most of the time. They're just kind of now starting to do paid. FTC compliance and things like that is not really as taken as seriously there as it is in the US. So you can just feel like in the US, everything has just been more organized. It's more legit, quote unquote, here. It's just more of a bigger business. And in Europe and a lot of countries like France or even Italy, Spain, people still look at influencers with really, you're going to be working with influencers? Do you think there's going to be really a good image for your brand? Or do you feel like it's going to make sense? There's still a little bit of that. And people are now just kind of coming around, understanding truly the power that they have and how important it is to integrate them into your strategy. So by working and living in the US, I feel like I have almost a look in the future that I can take that and bring it back to smaller regions, smaller countries, and tell them, hey, guys, this is what you need to be doing right now because this is what's working in America.
So interesting. And then I hear about places like China that are ahead of what we're doing. So I don't know. I mean, ahead, behind, whatever. It's all subjective, I guess. So I'm curious, what have you seen that's been done overseas that has worked particularly well and maybe even perhaps better than in the States? What can we learn from them and what they're doing?
The first thing really that comes to mind is those fashion YouTube channels. They're really, really different than the content that I see in the US.
Yeah, how are they different? I mean, I think you're describing higher end fashion versus lower end fashion, but how else are they different?
I think it's more you have this, I'm going to give her a shout out, but you have this one amazing YouTuber who's British. Her name is Lizzie Hatfield. Her Instagram handle is Shot from the Streets. her YouTube channel is Lizzie Hatfield, but typically like her channel, I don't think I've seen something like that in the US. And her channel is really like, her whole concept is about testing basics. So she'll have like she's comparing like white t-shirts, and she'll try so many different brands, so many different price points, and she'll style them in a way that's really, really cool and really interesting. And it's exactly, I think, the content that people are really, truly wanting to get. Like, it's more editorial, but it's approachable. And that's, of course, one example, but there's so many others that are like that. And that's why a lot of fashion brands are really only working with those YouTubers. Maybe they're working with those YouTubers on YouTube, or maybe they're working with those YouTubers on Instagram. But that variety of content, and maybe it has also to do with the style too. You know, the European style is more like darker colors. It's all about like the white tee, the jeans. You know, it's very like the French style, quote unquote. There's more of that. And then with the German YouTubers, they will have like beautiful, videos about luxury items. And that does extremely well as well. You know, thinking of someone like Leonie, who was a pioneer, who was one of the first, influencers. There's amazing German bloggers out there, influencers that all happen to have, at one point, maybe they don't have it anymore, but they had a YouTube channel, and a lot of them started on YouTube, which is also really interesting. So that's the first thing that comes to mind in terms of what's a bit different. But I would say that it's really, even though I hate to admit it, but it is more the other way around. It's really more what I see to be different in the US and what is working here that then tends to translate over to Europe. And typically what is working here will work in Europe maybe 2-3 years, because maybe now the market isn't even as mature yet,
So what are those things? Because it's interesting. Like, I look at certain campaigns and people are stuck in their ways and, only activating on Instagram. And I don't know, I've got gripes with how we do it. What really stands out to you as things that you would maybe, share with clients overseas? You're like, you should really look into this. This is something that you may not be doing yet that's been working and successful.
Yeah. Before I talk more about like a specific campaign example, just the fact that, for example, what you're seeing right now on Netflix, where some people like the Home Edit or Studio McGee, they have their own shows on Netflix, and all these content creators, they're really going from like the small screen to like the medium-sized screen on Netflix. That transition to me is really, really interesting. And to me, that means that we are consuming content in such a different way. YouTube today is really more the way that you would consume television, and Netflix today is like, if I'm putting myself in the shoe of whoever's thinking of the content on Netflix, they're thinking, okay, all these people that follow them will want to go to Netflix and subscribe because they love those creators. So like that, for example, to me is like, not to even to mention like Chiara Ferragni, who just had, an Amazon, whose documentary, I think she just announced that she's going to be doing a reality show. The D'Amelio TikTok sisters that are signed on Hulu. So you're seeing this popping up, and that hasn't really happened as much in Europe yet. So that's already like, there's years apart in the way that people understand how important those people are and how relevant and how influential those people are.
Is Netflix and Hulu and all those streaming platforms, are they as big there as they are here?
The biggest difference is that I would say in a lot of European countries, it's mainly Netflix, and that's it. And then maybe there's one other. There isn't as much variety. Like here we have like 5-6 different. And in Europe, looking just at France, for example, they have Netflix, and then they have something that's kind of equivalent of HBO Max. And that's kind of it. There isn't, and maybe they have Amazon Prime, but they don't use it, I would say, as much. But here we have 5-6 different streaming platforms, whereas in Europe, it's everything really is on Netflix. So Netflix has such a good example of a brand that truly understood going into these different markets, how to tap into those different cultures in different markets. Because the French Netflix has nothing to do with the American Netflix. The Italian Netflix has nothing to do. UK Netflix, more or less the same. German Netflix has nothing to do. Like, it's so interesting. People don't realize that because in the US, you just consume the content that you have. When I go home in France, I look at Netflix and it's like the content is more or less all French, and it's French shows, French movies. There's Netflix originals that are specifically made for the French market. So like that's such a good example of a brand that understood that they needed to be specific about each of those countries.
That's so interesting, just because I feel like that is a perfect example of how a company, Netflix, curates a feed. I mean, we don't really necessarily think of it in that same way, but like, of course they do. And like my Netflix wouldn't even look the same as my, my mom's Netflix, and we could be living in the same house even if we want. Like, it's really based on, curating it for you and their own algorithm and stuff like that. Even in terms of like, I hear you, I definitely see more influencers sort of converting into, having shows. It's been a while now since they've been having products of their own, things like that. I mean, one thing I love to see is just having influencers who can truly diversify their revenue streams. I've been saying this for the longest time. Influencers sort of put their eggs fully and exclusively in the brand partnership basket are not really great business people, in my opinion. And also, I don't even know that that's really attractive to brands. I feel like more and more brands are looking for influencers who aren't just influencers. That's like the requirement that I see on a lot of like castings and stuff that are going out. Have you seen similar to that?
Oh my God, so much. And I think one of the biggest trends also that came out of last year is that I think now brands want to associate themselves with people that are spokespeople, with that really defend specific cause. I think during Black Lives Matter, we saw so many of those influencers that really came out and really defended the cause and really stepped up and said, I'm going to really educate my audience. I'm actually going to really make a difference and not just promoting certain products, but actually truly using my influence for good. And you have seen those trends really pop up all over the world. There was this huge YouTuber in Brazil that was someone that really went neck and neck with the president and that was truly like not supporting the president with it, the way that it handled COVID. I mean, you just have those people that really, I think, are using their platform in a positive way, or at least they're trying to. And I think brands are looking for that. And how that is really different, I think, right now in Europe is that I'm going to be talking more about the French market specifically because I know this one so well, but that is not yet really truly understood and maybe accepted yet. Because I think in the eyes of many people, it's like, wait, who are you to tell me, about politics or about this and that? Like, how legitimate are you to tell me about those topics? Like, you were selling me, a face cream 2 seconds ago, but actually, no, it's not that. It's like those people have a platform and it's like how you use it that makes you interesting. And I totally agree with you with people that are really diversifying their business. And actually, that was a huge part of Reward Style too, because a lot of it was to empower those people to actually have kind of a steady income with affiliate on top of having, those brand deals and other things. And I think right now we are seeing those influencers that are starting brands that are going into so many different ventures. And I agree that that should be a huge quality or something to look for brands when they're casting.
And also just, just influencers who, I heard this years ago and it resonated with me so much. So many influencers have never had any other job before being an influencer. Like, they don't even know what it is to, report to somebody or to have deadlines or like any sort of like business acumen that we all maybe take for granted that we know because we've had jobs before and reported to people and worked for organizations. They don't necessarily know these things. So we can't expect them to be like master creatives and community builders and also expert business people. So I think it's important to speak in conversations like this where like maybe there's an influencer out there listening, or maybe there's a talent manager out there listening who's advising that influencer, and like absolutely always diversifying your revenue is key to many successful businesses. This is certainly not excluded from that. I'd love to dig into a little bit of like the affiliate revenue stream since you have experience there. It certainly has been in the news. Read an article. It was like the top 9 affiliate marketing platforms of 2021. It's like a Business Insider article. And most of them I had heard. Reward Style was certainly one of them. They're like LTK now. They sort of rebranded over the years. And there were like a few that I had actually never heard of before. I guess like to start, my question to you is like the influencers who are doing really, really well in affiliate. And I've heard stories of people making well over 6 figures in affiliate alone. What are they doing different? Like, how are they being so successful at affiliate marketing?
I love this question. Well, I think the first thing that I will say even before diving into this is that affiliate, whether it was through a platform like a Reward Style or truly like an affiliate network, that was really the first way for influencers to be like kind of financially independent in a way, because they were really the ones controlling, how much they were going to be using affiliate in order to kind of get their own income without it being solely dependent on brand partnerships and those flat fees. So I think that's really interesting to remember, is that affiliate is really a win-win for both brands and talents, because of course brands are only paying influencers when those influencers are selling. So that's number one. And I think number two, I guess those that are doing extremely well have simply just nurtured an amazing audience that is really, really engaged. And typically, actually, those that do really well are not the huge influencers. They're really the micro plus influencers, like the 50, 60, 78 1,000 followers. If they have a much higher follower count, it's because they've grown with their audience along the way. And also they've been extremely consistent. I think someone that does really well with affiliates, someone that has been doing it for years, and people are so used to either them using an LTK or using, at the end of the day, it's really just a link that we're clicking on and purchasing. So from the consumer side of things, it doesn't change at all what they're doing. But of course, for the talent, I think it makes a huge difference. And another thing too is it really empowers them with the data. When an influencer uses affiliate and they're seeing that they're converting and they're seeing the commission coming through, they're able to know their worth. They're able to know, okay, wait, I'm actually driving quite a bit of sales here. If I'm making, this amount in commission, I can only imagine how much I'm driving in revenue for this brand. I should be charging more, for my upcoming project. And I think before this, there was no way for the talent to know anything. So with LTK, of course, they can see that. They have some reporting and analytics where they can see that. With affiliate networks, they can see that, like a share sale and a win, they'll be able to know how much commission they're making. They'll be able to see some data, and that really empowers them. And I always tend to ask, actually, a lot of the time to the talent agent or to the influencer directly, what's your conversion rate on LTK? Are you doing well there? Because that for me will be such a good indication of if the objective of a campaign is to be conversion, whether or not be a true good converter or not.
And that's something that I feel so strongly about this when it comes to training your audience to just buy from you. I mean, if you're just posting a bunch of lifestyle photos with an emoji by it, and it's a beautiful landscape, or you on a beach, or you with your adorable daughter, and it's just it's pretty content, and it's it could be art. I mean, I don't mean to undervalue it, but it's not full of necessary substance, and it's certainly not trying to sell something. Then when a sponsored post comes around, it feels so much more jarring. They're not so used to it. And it doesn't feel when I talk to a girlfriend of mine, I just have certain girlfriends who they're always ones to recommend the coolest stuff that they've found, And I'm no, I want to give me the good stuff. Give me what are you using? What do you love? My best friend's a makeup artist. And of course I want to go to her and know what she uses because I trust her. I don't want to do that research. And I just want you to tell me everything that I need to buy. And then I just assume that I'm going to love it. There's nothing different when it comes to influencer marketing. And so when, you talk about affiliate sales, it is an opportunity for all of the things that you listed to get that data. So few influencers actually analyze it. So few, it's such a missed opportunity. So few influencers use it, which is a missed opportunity to get their audience familiar with all sorts of brands that they use in everyday life, from, hair dryers to cars, literally anything that you could buy and purchase. And then I would assume that it's also a missed opportunity to just get on brands' radars and to be able to build case studies of successful sales. And that fact that it's actually not so much necessarily about the influencer's affinity towards that product, but their audience's affinity towards that product, because that's when they're going to actually see sales, really spike and conversions and stuff. So why do you think some influencers don't use affiliate?
Well, I think there's a couple of reasons. I think, again, to be earning a decent amount with affiliate every month, you do have to be extremely consistent, which means that you do have a style of content and a type of content that's really commercial. It's really your content for someone that's doing well with affiliate is going to be truly about linking all of your, whether it's fashion, beauty, interior, or whatever it may be. This is the style of content also that's really about promoting your products kind of constantly. So if your content is not really that, and maybe your content is a little bit more creative, or maybe you're truly more of a content creator, because now, as we know, brands are really hiring influencers truly only for their content sometimes. So of course, it's really different, I think, in the type of influencers that would do well with affiliate in that sense. You really do have to be linking out your products constantly and to have kind of trained a little bit your audience to be used to that and to be hungry for more. And there are some influencers that do it so well, because you're always oh, I want to know what she bought. I want to know what she bought for her home. I want to know what she bought for her recent, shopping spree, whatever. It's a type of influencer is what I mean. It's really a specific type of influencer that does well. And I think it's okay not for all influencers to do well with affiliate. There's so many other ways to diversify. We obviously talked about a lot of those talents, like starting a brand, but there's such a variety. I think I follow someone who's in France, but she has a book club. I know a lot of influencers are having that as well. She has a truly amazing book club with a huge community, and that's kind of her thing. And she has an amazing newsletter dedicated to books, and she gets that sponsored. So that's an extra revenue stream. So there's that, I think it's all about having a niche and tapping into it. We know some influencers are also starting podcasts, have amazing podcasts. That's an extra revenue stream. So there's just so many ways to diversify. diversify. I think it all just has to be kind of true to what the content is about, And like you said, if someone that never promotes anything, all of a sudden they have a sponsored post, it will kind of feel a bit weird for the audience. I don't think that's going to work as well. So I think it's all about staying kind of true to your sort of editorial style of content.
It is. And also just like making sure that it stays in your tone of voice, which is really difficult. I've been on the side, advocating on behalf of a talent when a brand butchers, like I'll say when something is so redlined, it's like bloodied the caption where, they submit something, it's in their tone of voice. It sounds really compelling. It hits all the points and yet they like butcher it. And they're like, no, let's say it like this instead. And it's like, what? Like, what? Why? I mean, like, why are you hiring them then? They're not a billboard. And like, why would you change that? They obviously said it. And to take that even a step further, there are a significant amount of influencers who work on so many branded content, and they're so used to brands butchering their captions and coming back with so many edits that I feel like they even have started to succumb to that. And that when they submit captions for brands, it starts to be a little more vanilla, like a little just, it sounds branded. And they're like, oh, but this will get approved more easily. And I'm like, no, like push against that. It's just not going to perform as well. And we all know that like putting the branded sponsored, hashtags and the tool, like it already sort of like less visibility already. So it's sort of like a continuous fight, to be honest, to be able to have branded content do well. So I think it's a whole other conversation, one that I hope all of us have, because it's doing all this work, but we're combating a lot against a lot of things that are sort of against us. And, the platforms, let's be real, they're just hoping that you're going to boost it and spend money to them so that they'll be the ones to save the day and get that visibility on your post. It's such an art. It's certainly not a science. And there's so much more that can be done. So before we go for today, I love asking our guests just some like rapid fire get to know you questions. It's a great opportunity. We've learned a lot about your awesome professional journey and a little bit about you and that you've lived all over. You're now in Brooklyn, all these things, but I want our community to get to know you a little bit better now that you're part of it. So are you ready for some get to know you questions?
I am.
Awesome. All right. Question number one. And this is, in the new role as a solopreneur, what would you say is currently the best part of your job?
Oh, I think it's really just to have that flexibility of waking up every day, deciding today I, for some reason, want to be working for 10 hours straight because I want to power through. And then tomorrow I only want to be working in the morning. In the afternoon, I'm going to take my afternoon because I don't know, I want to treat myself, go get my nails done. Go to the hairdresser. I don't know. To have that flexibility, honestly, like you can't put a price tag on that. I think it's really, really what hooks you and what is addictive also, because although you have to put your own boundaries and you also have to kind of discipline yourself to stay on schedule, you have that flexibility. And that's truly so amazing. And especially now that we're able to work from anywhere, even more so. But when you have your own, especially when you have a service-based company, truly one day I'm working from home, one day I'm working from a co-working space. Tomorrow, if I want to go to Europe and I want to work from there, I can. Nobody's going to tell me anything. So it's really, truly the flexibility.
That flexibility. Yes. All of that for sure. So my next question for you, do you consider yourself an introvert or more of an extrovert?
I think definitely an extrovert.
Really? Okay. Why?
Yeah. And I think that's really something, I think I always knew this about myself. Like I just love being around people. I really truly fuel my energy with people. Like my favorite thing is to go to a party where I don't know anybody and I'm going to be meeting a lot of people. That would be like my favorite activity.
Oh my God, it gives me anxiety thinking about it. We introverts need people like you who are extroverted. Oh my gosh. What else makes you such like 100% an extrovert?
Something I realized last year when we were more, under lockdown and quarantine during COVID, it was really hard for me not to have people, meeting people, talking to people face to face. And my boyfriend is the same as me. Like we both truly love being around groups of people a lot. And we were both like, thank God we have each other. Like I would have never been able to live on my own, for example, during this period. Like I think that I would have been really sad if I had been on my own. And I think it's truly just like, again, it's more of an energy thing. I'm so energized if I go to an event, if I go to a dinner party, if I'm with groups of people, that fuels me. And I think that someone that's maybe more of an introvert, that gives them a lot of, that drains them. And I think that's probably like the biggest difference. So yeah, I would say I'm definitely an extrovert.
Well, you're definitely in the right city because like the city that never sleeps, there's so much always going on in New York. I love it. Another question, do you like or dislike surprises?
I don't like. Interesting.
Really?
Yes, I'm not really like a patient person. And also I like kind of to control things truly and to be things. I like to have a bit of a control on what happens to me in my life and everything. And so surprises, I mean, as much as I love, when it's your birthday, when it's, you have a gift that maybe you didn't anticipate, something like that, like that's always a fun and nice surprise. But I like to control. I'm kind of a control freak. So I don't like to be surprised because then I'm always thinking, oh, if I had done it myself, I would have maybe done it differently.
You could say better. You can say better. It's fine.
But I mean, yeah, no. And I hate, like when I was a kid, for example, like it would drive me nuts to having to wait for like, Christmas and having to wait for your gift. Like I was the type of person, like I was looking for my gift to know what it was going to be,
Your parents are trying to hide them desperately. And they're like, oh, she got into the gifts again. We can't pull them from her. Just leave them alone. Let Santa come.
100%. I was like, I want to know, I think, you know what it is? I think I'm more of a curious person. And so I like to know. I like to know in advance, things like that. But sometimes I'm also good at letting go. Sometimes it's good to have a little, you need elements of surprise. I mean, I think we've just lived through a lot of different surprising moments in our lives in the past 18 months. So, you also have to be able to let go and go with the flow. I mean, you can't control it all. Honestly, it's impossible.
Amen to that. And my last question, and this is simply based on the fact that you've lived in so many different places. I'm so curious. What is your favorite vacation spot?
Ooh, vacation spot. I think, I'm super, super lucky that I've been able to go to a lot of different places in Europe, especially growing up. When you grow up in a country like France, it's a small country, but there's just an abundance of places that you can go to. You have the mountain, you have the sea, Mediterranean, the Atlantic. I mean, it's very, very different from one coast to the next. But I grew up going to this small island in France. It's on the west coast of France. It's called Ile-de-Ré, and it's the prettiest place. There are no cars. You can cycle everywhere. You eat delicious seafood. It's very coastal. It feels so far and remote from everything. And I think it's really one of my favorite places.
I'm definitely going to look up this, but I love that you're saying a place that I've never heard of before. That's awesome. And like you're from there, so I completely trust you. Have you been to Governor's Island since you've lived in New York?
I have not, but interestingly, I just went to Fire Island maybe a few weeks ago, and that to me was like, oh, I love this place. Like that was I love small, kind of more remote places on vacation. I don't want to be hyper connected. I want to be able to check out. I want to be able to feel kind of far away. Fire Island was actually an amazing place that I recently discovered in New York. And I love that in New York, you take a car for 2 hours and you have so many places that you can go to, the sea, upstate New York, you have hikes, you have amazing beaches. That is really what makes the city so special, in my opinion.
For sure. Yeah. Getting out of it. No, I'm just kidding. If you live here long enough, like it's the best city, but like every 6 months or so, you gotta see the sky. You gotta like not see buildings around you all the time. It's such a real thing. But yeah. Fire Island. I've actually been once, but they have hotels, like not really. I mean, they have some hotels there, mostly like summer homes, but they have cars there. Governor's Island, no cars. So it sort of reminds me of what you were saying before. They have like concerts and stuff there. And like, yeah, so definitely check out Governor's Island. I'm going to look up where you said in France. What is it called again? The island?
It's called Ile-de-Ré.
Ile-de-Ré. I'm going to look this up. Cecilia, thank you so much. I feel like I learned so much. You have such a great perspective on all of this. And I'm sure that a lot of our listeners really appreciated it as well. If our listeners want to get in touch with you and connect, what's the best way for them to do so?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I can pop my info in maybe our Slack that we have, but I have my Instagram. I think Instagram or LinkedIn really is where I spend a lot of time. And my work email is cecilia@believe-influence.com. So that everybody can contact me over email as well.
Perfect. And we will list all of those in the show notes and in the description on YouTube. Cecilia, you've been wonderful. I'm so excited to see you around WIIM. That's where everyone can reach you too. If you're a member of WIIM, they'll see you in the Slack Slack channel to see you now in the Facebook community. I'm super grateful that you were joining us, and for everyone, thanks everyone. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, we gotta have you back. Check out our website for more ways to get involved, including all the information you need about joining our collective. You can check out all the information at IamWIIM.com.